Well, good morning and welcome to the Mago Nutrition Podcast. I'm Danielle, a dietitian and certified diabetes care and education specialist. And I'm also a mom of two. So I am wanting to welcome you and let you know that this podcast is about answering your questions and giving you practical nutrition strategies to help you and your family flourish. So it is back to school season. So I'd like to kind of have a conversation on ideas to prepare for school lunches or what to look on the labels for your kids, and more information than that. So just before we get started, if you have a question that you would like to have featured in an Imago Nutrition podcast episode, go to imagonutrition.com/podcast. So IMAGO nutrition.com/podcast. So the first thing is I kind of just wanted to share what I do as a mom of two boys. I understand the stress that goes into every day having things prepared for school, not just what they need to bring as far as homework or projects. Our schools also do fun days where they wear something specific. So there's just so much to remember on top of early dismissal and no school days. So I understand the stress of just adding something you have to do daily that, you get a break from the summer. So what I do is I do really like those individual divided containers. So mine have 3 sections. Others have more than that. So one section is big enough to hold like a sandwich or a wrap, and the other 2 sections are smaller. One is the second smallest, and then the smallest. So there's kind of 3 different sizes, but they're really helpful for me because I like to think about what specific food groups I'm packing. And one thing I focus on is having 1 fruit, 1 veggie, 1 to 2 sources of protein, and a high fiber carbohydrate, or something crunchy. So let's dive into that a little bit. So why we want protein is for them to help them stay satisfied for longer, and obviously other reasons protein are important. But one thing is to have some variety so they don't get bored, and that could be protein sources could be hummus, deli meat, cheese, any peanut butter or almond butter if that's allowed by the school, so like nut butter. Edamame is a good plant-based protein that has a lot of fiber. It's nice and crunchy. Quinoa, I'll tell you what I kind of do with quinoa in a minute. Tofu or bean and lentil pasta. Dairy could be another protein you utilize. Our family typically utilizes that for breakfast. One reason is because dairy typically requires a little more refrigeration, except for cheese, like string cheeses, we definitely put in the lunch. But we utilize the dairy for breakfast, so that would be kefir or yogurt, or milk. And so it's interesting to note all the things that dairy provides for us, as adults and children. Dairy provides probiotics, which is those good, healthy bacteria for your gut, calcium, and protein. So if your child is around the age 4 to 8, they need about 2.5 cups of dairy per day to meet their calcium needs. And if your child is older than that, they need 3 cups of dairy a day to meet their calcium needs. So it's kind of amazing how high that amount is. The serving of vegetable requirements is a little bit lower than that for kids. So if your child's 4 to 8, your serving of veggie goal is 2 cups a day. And if your child is older than that, it's about 2.5 cups a day. So it's interesting. I think a lot of us focus on fruits and veggies, and we also really want to focus on dairy for all those good reasons. So, back to those divided containers, 1 to 2 sources of protein. So, if I have something like hummus or nuts or peanut butter, almond butter, um, those are just a little bit lower per gram than, say, your deli meat and cheese or um, bean or lentil pasta. So, thinking about just like the amount of protein you're giving your children in the meals, offering 1 to 2 sources is kind of helpful. If maybe they don't like that other one source, then they at least have another source of protein. So um, that is the section that I typically make in like the bigger portion of the container. So in like a wrap or a sandwich, is where I would normally put the biggest source of protein, the bean or lentil pasta. That would be something like a pasta salad. So, utilizing leftover um, plain bean or lentil pasta noodles and just adding, the veggies, Italian dressing, meat and cheese. And if your child doesn't like that, you can also do that disassembled, which is really nice to think about having disassembled meals. So one of my kids doesn't like sandwiches yet, and so we just kind of make a disassembled sandwich. So having the meat and cheese, sometimes I put bread, but sometimes I just put crackers in there as his disassembled sandwich. Um, and then for the hummus, that could be really helpful for the veggies, just as a dip, but they're also getting extra protein and fiber with the hummus. Avocados or guacamole could be also a great option for a dip, and that's going to give your child a heart healthy fat, so a little extra calories that they need too. And that gives a lot of flavor to the veggies. So don't be afraid to add, ranch or other dips to help them enjoy their veggies. They don't need to have those veggies plain. Any little fat in your dip can also help absorb those fat soluble vitamins in those veggies. I typically do, just raw veggies cut up because we typically do cooked veggies. But sometimes I think it's kind of nice if you do find that your kids like leftovers cold. It's always good to know your child's favorites. So even leftover chicken from dinner, I would normally like to heat that in my lunch or have it in a wrap or in a salad if it's not heated. But my kids really love ketchup. And so it doesn't matter that they can't heat up the chicken, they will still eat it if they have some ketchup. So definitely those dips can be really helpful in knowing what your kids' favorites are. And utilizing those leftovers means you get to cook less for sure. Fruit, I again typically use fresh fruit for the lunches. And one thing that's helpful, I guess I use both those little fruit cups, those plastic fruit cups where it's the fruit in its own juice. And when I ask my children to save those containers because then I can put the fresh fruit in those containers too. So you're kind of having like a separated section in addition to those 3 sections. So maybe I should just buy a lunch container with 4 sections, but it is helpful just to be able to separate, something that's a little more wet like fruit from your crackers so they're not going to get soggy. And so those things are helpful for the fruit. Otherwise, I just put it in the other one of the smaller sections. So that is how I kind of assemble my meals. It makes it easier in the morning when I know what I'm looking for. Okay, I need a protein, I need a fruit, I need a veggie, and then a high fiber carb would be something like Triscuits or roasted chickpeas. Those are examples of high fiber carbs. Carbohydrates are your energy-based foods, and obviously your kids need lots of energy throughout the day. And I alternate that with something crunchy. When I say something crunchy, that's not necessarily a high fiber choice, just an extra energy based food. So that could be like goldfish or pretzels. And when I have those goldfish or pretzels, I'm still giving my child that fiber with those fruits and veggies. So it's not that they're missing the fiber that day. It's just, again, giving some variety and lots of options. So for the next tip that I would recommend is ask your kids if the portions are right, because with our goal as parents, our role is to just provide the food, and they are going to decide if they're going to eat it and how much. And when they're at school, it's kind of hard to determine if we're giving them the right portion. Are they feeling more hungry, wish they had a little bit more, or are they feeling a little overwhelmed actually when we have too much food in front of our kids on their plate or even in their lunchbox? It can be unappetizing, and almost the overwhelm amount of food can make them not eat as much. So asking if the portions are right is really helpful. When I say utilize leftovers, I really love those thermos things, that can hold soup, or it can really hold anything you want to have warm. It doesn't have to be just soup. And when you think about using those, you do want to, excuse me, prime them. And so how you do that is you take, a cup of really hot water, boiling water, and put it in the thermos about 10 minutes prior to filling it up with warm food. So stick a cup of water in the microwave, pour it into the thermos, screw the lid on, and wait 10 minutes before you put in the warm food for the day. So my kids like to request, leftover mac and cheese from dinner, or leftover lasagna from dinner, or any type of casserole that we make, or mixed dish. And this is where I have the quinoa bowl. So one of our meals is like a quinoa Thai, with veggies and tofu. So we might just put the leftovers in there. Another quinoa dish that I would, since we're on that topic, would be like a baked quinoa oatmeal. So it's kind of like almost like a cake-like consistency, but it's the quinoa and oatmeal and fruit for flavor. So it's a really great recipe from wellplated.com. So wellplated quinoa bars is what they're called if you want to Google that recipe. So those are kind of fun, and I wouldn't necessarily put that in the thermos. It doesn't have to be warm. So that's kind of a nice thing to put in a lunch that doesn't really have to be super cold or super warm. So that is how I utilize those leftovers, is using that thermos. And it really does keep it warm. Make sure you remember that fork or spoon. And then obviously in the winter times it could be soups or stews, but yes, that's really a great option to have more variety. And with that, I like to talk about how to balance your make-ahead meals with your portion and assemble meals. So I mentioned a couple make-ahead meals already, like the quinoa breakfast bars. And then some other ones that I do are quinoa burgers. So it's basically like a veggie burger made out of quinoa, spinach, and garlic, and Parmesan, I believe. So that recipe is from Skinny Taste. If you want to go to skinnytaste.com and just Google, in the skinnytaste.com website, search quinoa burgers, and that recipe will come up for you. So that's a really great make-ahead. The quinoa breakfast bars are a great make-ahead. Avocado egg salad is another great make-ahead. The only disadvantage of that one is it can change color. So if your child is sensitive to that, maybe that wouldn't be a good one as far as lunch, but maybe on the weekend you can make it ahead and have it together. Egg boats, so boiling eggs, hard-boiled eggs beforehand. You can make egg boats, or just your child can have a hard-boiled egg for breakfast for lunch for the protein. And an egg boat is really just a hard-boiled egg. You toss the yolk and you fill the hole with hummus. So one of my kids, that's almost their favorite food. So it's kind of nice. You can make those hard-boiled eggs ahead of time. Make 3 different things: the avocado egg salad, or the egg boats, or just the hard-boiled eggs by itself. So you kind of want to balance those make-ahead meals and not have them too often, because that can cause up more stress, more meal prep. So just making maybe one of those a week or every other week, what have you, and then doing the portion or simple meals. That could be like a sandwich or wrap, meat, cheese, and crackers, the peanut butter and jelly, tuna. Tuna and crackers would be another great, protein and high fiber carb. And then leftovers, I consider also the portion or simple. Since they're already made, you're really just dishing it out, putting it in that third miss. So that is kind of tip number 4, if you will. And next, I just wanted to kind of talk about what I look for on the nutrition labels when I'm purchasing like snacks and food to put in my kids' lunches. Well, really any food we have in the house. So the first one is fiber. We get fiber obviously from our fresh or frozen fruits and veggies. That's where the most amount of fiber comes from, is the fresh or frozen fruits and veggies. But when we are buying any other like snack foods, crackers or cereal or bars, things like that, looking at the fiber on there can be really helpful. Our goal is to have 3 grams or more, and we want to be cautious if it's a really high, marked really high. That means they've probably added a lot of fiber, and that can cause a lot of GI discomfort for anybody, especially for smaller tummies like your kids. So, not much more than 8 grams of fiber would you want in a single serving of food. So about 3 grams, 5 grams, that's a really great goal for, a bar or crackers, bread, cereal. Like I mentioned, anything from a box, mainly carbohydrate foods. So you're not looking for fiber in your meat and cheese, obviously, and fruits and veggies don't come with a nutrition label. So that's what we're looking for as our goal. And then another one that's a really hot topic is added sugar. So when I talk about this, I want you to remember that you're not looking at the total sugar line, you're looking at the grams of added sugar. That line is right below the total sugars. And so it'll say how many grams of added sugars are in the product per serving. And so when you look at that, you want to look at dividing that number by 4. So 1 teaspoon is 4 grams. So if a product has 8 grams of added sugar, you know that in 1 serving of that food, you're going to get 2 teaspoons of added sugar. So 8 divided by 4 would be 2 teaspoons of added sugar in that product. And the goal is not 0. So for women, it is 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day or less. And these are goals from the American Heart Association. And for kids, it's 6 teaspoons of added sugar or less. So it's kind of fun that moms and kids are on the same page with their sugar, added sugar goal. And then men would be 9 teaspoons of added sugar or less, just in case you're listening and you were curious about your goal. So the goal is not 0. That's really important to remember. Things like really great healthy food choices like kefir has added sugar in it, but it has so many benefits. It has calcium and protein and probiotics, and you wouldn't want to miss out on all of those benefits just because we're trying to aim for too low of added sugar. So, when you're looking at added sugar, again, that can be in bars or cereals, even crackers. There's lots of ways you can get added sugar. So just be aware that your goal and your child's goal is not 0, and just trying to find the yogurt that has less added sugar, or the crackers or the cereal that have less added sugar. The next I wanted to is just a few other tips and tricks. So, one thing that can be really fun is having, if your kids are a little bit older, having lunch packing stations. So, you can have like a drawer designated in your refrigerator or a shelf designated in your pantry. Ideally, both, because we want a little bit from the refrigerator always and a little bit from the pantry most often. Um, and you just pull those drawers out, and they kind of can assemble with those pre-sectioned containers. And then this is where you can be teaching meal planning, really. You can be teaching that you need the protein, you need the fiber to help you feel satisfied, then you need that energy food. It could be fun to have like a little tally sheet for like a color contest, so they can tally up the colors that are in their lunches throughout the week. So it's kind of, sometimes I'll accidentally give them like all orange foods, like oranges and carrots, and not even necessarily try for that, but they can actually kind of aim for different colors in their lunches based on what's available in the fridge. So definitely having, some pre-cut fruits and veggies, if that makes it easier for you, or like those pre-portioned avocado or hummus cups, that can be easy to grab too. And then the fruits and veggies, some of them can be on the counter, like tomatoes and a lot of different fruits can be on the counter. So that could be really readily available, so that kids can know that those are available too. So that can be really fun. I kind of already mentioned reutilizing things to cut down on cost on plastic bags, as far as those little plastic cups from the fruit cups, or you can get silicone muffin cups for separation of like those more wet foods with the dry foods. One thing to think about is, when they're getting back into school and having, they're more mentally fatigued. I don't know about you, but I'm always nervous of how they're going to come home super crabby and super tired. And so thinking about that snack right after school, just for really good appetites for dinner, but also to address their immediate need. So aiming for protein and fiber with that snack after school, and making sure that snack doesn't get delayed and it's too close to the meal. Otherwise, or that would cause us to not have a great appetite for dinner. So think about that. And when you have that, maybe have a list, or again, a designated drawer in your refrigerator, so that they can remember to choose snacks from the refrigerator, not just the pantry, because those pantry snacks are typically those carbohydrates, just energy-based foods, and we do want just a little bit of fiber, so they can make it till dinner, or a little bit of protein so they can make it till dinner. As far as beverages, ideally for all children and adults, ideally we want most often water. So the fluid goals for ages 4 to 5 would be 1.5 to 5 cups of water daily. And that could be higher too if your kids are really active and running around throughout the day. But 4 years to 5 years old, our goal for water is 1.5 to 5 cups daily. I get this question a lot. Another way to check is, if your child is having great bowel movements, and also, if their urine is a good color, not super yellow. And the other beverage would be for calcium, the milk. So skim or 1% milk. The goal for that for ages 4 to 5 is 2.5 cups of milk a day. So that's where you can get a lot of your dairy goals that we mentioned earlier. And then for older kids, 6 years and older, water goal is 7 to 14 cups per day. On the higher end would be those kids that are about the 14 to 18-year-old boys. So 7 cups of water to up to 14 cups of water if your kid is a boy, pretty active, and older, like the 14 to 18 age range. And then as far as 6+ goal for milk would be 2 to 3 cups per day, and the higher end would be for those 9-year-old kids. So again, the milk goal is 2 to 3 cups per day for ages 6+, and the higher end is for your 9-year-olds and older. So some beverages that we want to just limit a little bit is your fruit juice. I always get this question about whether you give your kids juice or not, and I do. We save it for breakfast only, and my kids don't typically drink a lot for breakfast, so it kind of feeds right into this goal of no more than a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup of juice per day for kids 4 to 5. So no more than a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup of juice per day for kids 4 to 5 years old. And then for your kids that are older, 6+, it's no more than 1 cup of fruit juice per day. So not much different, but no more than 1 cup of fruit juice per day for kids 6+. And the reason for that is not necessarily the added sugar. If you're choosing 100% fruit juice, it is a really good, vitamin C source. It's just that they're not feeling full from that, and a lot of calories in a small space. So that's really the reason for that. It's not necessarily the sugar that's added, because if you're choosing the 100% fruit juice, there's no added sugar. It's just really that they're not feeling satisfied in a lot of calories in a small space. And then really the other beverages that are out there, there's sports drinks like Gatorade, soda, flavored milk. These things we want to definitely save for special occasions. We do use Gatorade in our house, for swim meets or soccer games, things that are really high intensity activities, but we definitely don't have them every day. It's really kind of a seasonal thing. And ideally, really having the water most often. So the other thing I want to mention before we close is just that your kids are getting really good balanced meals offered in school lunches. I think they do have a bad rap as far as, maybe they're not tasting good or they're not providing our kids good food. But actually they are required to have balance in those school lunches. I just asked my kids the other day, what would the fruits and veggies that you get offered at school lunch? And that the answer they had was they had the option of choosing broccoli, peas, salad, apples, bananas, and frozen berries. So it's really nice to know that, those fruits and veggies are available for your kids at the school lunch. And they are required to give some type of dairy for protein or another type of dairy for the meal. And then you want to make sure you're not having like a negative perspective on the school lunches, because that can be carried out by your kids, and those other kids that are using school lunches can feel that kind of underlying attitude towards school lunches. So just remember, those school lunches are really balanced. They're required by the state or the government, and they do provide fruits and veggies. It's just whether or not your child is choosing them. So just know exposure is what is needed for them to eventually start choosing those foods. So exposure at home can help them choose those foods at the school lunch. So in summary, I would say what you want to focus on, we talked about, is balancing of protein, fiber, and carbohydrates to feel satisfied and to have the energy throughout the day. And then making sure, that snack after school is not too close to the meal, but still gives, addresses their hunger needs. And consider those beverage choices. I think a lot of people always ask me those beverage recommendations, which is why I included those in the podcast today. And if you needed to go back to those, the resource for that is Healthy Drinks, Healthy Kids.org. So Healthy Drinks, Healthy Kids.org. So those are actually relatively new in the past 2 to 3 years recommendations for drinks. They didn't have those prior for kids. So those are really helpful to know their fluid needs and stay hydrated throughout the day. So that can help with appetite control too. Well, I thank you so much for listening. And if you think this episode would be helpful for someone, please feel free to share it. And as always, we want to thank Happy Pill for our theme song, Thinking About Food. Have a great day.